Hey friends, welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Billy Heather, and I am joined today with someone so special. This man's my pastor, obviously, and we'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah.
But just an incredible thought leader in the church today, incredible thinker when it comes to strategy and systems and business. I think he's got an entrepreneur heart like none I've seen, and dresses really cool. Obed Martinez is in the house today.
Thank you, man. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here with you.
Yeah, welcome. We're so glad you're here.
Yeah, likewise.
At the time of this recording, our church, Gospel Church, actually launches tomorrow.
Absolutely.
And so you're in town for the launch.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wouldn't miss it for nothing.
Flew over from Cali.
Yeah. Spent some time in Times Square.
Yep.
Before we got here, and we're on a lake right now, so It's great. And part of it is a little bit frozen, but it looks good. We just kept on thinking, man, we'd love to come here in the summer.
Yes.
I bet you it would be just amazing.
We've already had a bunch of people say, how come you haven't launched in the summer? They were kind of like, you couldn't have launched in July or something because we're freezing our butts off over here. And,
but it's beautiful.
Yeah, we love it, man. Our community, if you don't know, my wife and I moved from California to Western New York to plant a church. And I actually met Jesus in your church, my home church, Destiny Church. My wife grew up there, was a part of one of those first families that started the ministry. And now we're like, 10 years later, man, we're here sitting about to do this thing.
Come on, man. Let's go. You stepping into it.
Yep. So here, our show's called The Good News Podcast, and we've just kind of been trying to sift through different conversations and just talk about things in life, and real things. And so I always love just to hear like your personal story.
Yeah.
Obviously, I want to talk business. If you got some thoughts too on the metaverse, I'd love to talk about that. Like, what's that going to do for business? But first, I mean, for anybody that doesn't know you, who are you? Where are you from? What do you do?
I grew up in a faith home. My parents were people of faith, and both came from pastors' families. My mother's family was more on the mission side.
Okay.
And but yeah, it was fantastic, and we and then my father, obviously, after having 5 children very quick, him and my mom, he landed up getting into business. And like a lot of families, we had our ups and downs. My father left our home for a while, and I think really, I think now looking back, you can extract a lot of lessons from that. Dad just never experienced that kind of success, and really kind of sabotaged it in some degree, and that's why I tell people all the time, it's easy to be poor. It's difficult to be successful.
That's good. Break that down. So when you say it's easy to be poor, like you mean like a mentality?
Yeah, poor mentality, or just being poor. At the end of the day, there's it's a mentality. There's and there's if you're poor, you don't have a lot, and when you have a lot, there's a lot to think about. There's a lot to manage, and everybody always says, "Man, I want to be successful," and I'm like, "Well, I just want to let you know it's difficult," and so. My mom and dad, before my mom passed away, got back together, and I saw the greatest restoration that, a person could see, a person of faith. But, when my father left, part of me left in some degree. It caused me to grow up really fast, become the father of the home at 11 years old, and got, involved with drugs and alcohol, in and out of jail. I was 16, and then, came out on a Monday. And my mother invited me to go to church that Wednesday. I went. And then that Friday was youth camp. And that was on July 8th, 1989.
That's unbelievable. We were talking with another guest on the show, and he was talking about how he got rocked at youth camp. Just something about youth camp.
Yeah, something about youth camps, man. And, from there, I just never really looked back, man. I mean, I just really realized, man, if I could be sold out for a neighborhood, and the best thing they're going to do is if I die, I'll get a T-shirt and wear it.
Yeah. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in California, in Wilmington, California.
Wilmington. Okay, so like South Bay area.
South Bay. Yep, absolutely.
What's your favorite part of South Bay?
I think probably the beaches, obviously.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Man, living here, people are like, do you miss it? And I just tell them honestly, yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's every community has something amazing.
Yeah.
The desert where we live today, I mean, you wake up to the beautiful mountains, and it's beauty. I go to Hawaii a lot on vacation, and I always tell my friend, man, this is incredible. And he's like, yeah, I just kind of wake up to this, but we see it in a different way. Yeah. And so anyways, this is, where you're at is beautiful, and we're on a lake right now, as I said, and it's, we don't get that back at home.
Yeah. It's a different perspective. I mean, when we first moved here, we were living in South Bay, same area. And we just got here. We came right in the middle of winter. And everyone was like, oh, get ready for the snow. And I was like, man, we love the snow.
Yeah, right.
Like the first couple months we were here, we were just having fun every day and just enjoying
100%.
it. And we would talk to people and they say, why would you move here?
Yeah.
And I'm like, you tell me what's good about this place. You know what I mean?
100%.
And so
no, and I mean, and that's what happened to us, you know. After I got saved, I went into ministry and, you know, and traveled all over the world. And one day I'm leaving Palm Springs and, you know, God speaks to me and says, I want you to come here and start a revolution. And I'm just like, what?
Yeah,
you know,
Palm Springs, California.
Yeah, I'm from LA.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not going to come to the desert. And it was interesting because, you know, every time we talked to people about it for that 1 year, they were like, man, that place is so hot. You know, and everybody's language was always negative. It wasn't negative that they were being negative. They were just, it's just so hot over there. How are you going to live there? It's just so hot. And, you know, even till this day, we talk to people and we're like, you know, what's amazing is that we love the heat, you know, and, you know, people probably have told you the same thing here. Why would you move out here? It's cold. It's snowing. Well, God puts a grace on you, you know, and all of a sudden you love where you know you're called.
That's great.
And that's what happened to us.
Yeah. And I've known you now for quite some time. I mean, I grew up not necessarily churched, as a lot of people would say, but I remember coming to Destiny Church and really hearing, we were in a series called Circle Maker. And I remember you preaching a message and it just rocked me and it made me give my life to Jesus. And so I got to kind of sit under you for pretty much my entire time of being involved in church.
Yeah.
And one thing I've always appreciated about you, Pastor, is you speak with an understanding of how powerful your words are. You know, that Job 22:28 kind of stuff, like you shall
100%.
declare a thing, it'll be established.
Yeah.
How important is that just for anybody, like to just be, you know, careful with their words? When they're
I think
things.
that, you know, I think people forget that everything we live in today came out of the mouth of God, right? You know, he spoke everything into existence except man. But the amazing thing about it is that people don't understand how powerful your words are. Your words will shape someone's life. It can make someone's life. It can break someone's life. No one is really hurt by circumstances before they're first hurt by words.
Wow.
Right. And so no kid is ever born dysfunctional, right? They're not born with a dysfunctional thought process. You know, they're not, you know, people can be born in poverty, but it doesn't mean they're born being poor.
Yeah.
Two different things, right? People sit there and say, well, that person's grateful because their parents were rich. Well, there could be people the same way, being born in wealth, but it doesn't mean they're rich. And the reality is that everybody is born with their mind having no words in it. And what shapes a person's life is its words. So somebody who is born in poverty, but hears words of prosperity, will end up breaking that poverty over their life. It's the same way somebody who's born in wealth, but hears negative things, will land up burning away their wealth. Because we are all made up of words.
Man,
and the
good.
reality is that whatever you declare, it is established.
I love that. Yeah, I've been chewing on a thought that the words you use is the world you live in.
Absolutely.
And it's like those, what you call a thing is what your life will approach it as.
Yes.
And so if this is the most difficult season that I've ever been in, and I'm constantly noticing this is terrible, this is hard, well, then I'm going to feel it.
You're going to feel it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What would you tell to somebody who maybe is in that lane already? I mean, especially like in secular culture, there's obviously a big motivation and positivity movement. You know, manifestation is a big kind of business principle that you kind of hear tossed. What would you say to somebody that says, I already lived that out, but like people close to me are negative and I'm just tired of, you know, dealing with that?
I think you have to get to a place in your life. What you got to ask yourself a question: how much can I tolerate it? Right? You know, well, sometimes we think we can still be around people by helping them, associating with them, when in our reality you've outgrown them. And you know, if you're still around people who are negative and yet you are positive, it is almost as if I would question: are you really positive? Because a person like myself, who obviously spends a lot of time in my mornings making sure my mind is right, don't have time to be around anybody who is negative. It doesn't even matter how close they could be to me. it's just not, I don't have a tolerance for that.
Yeah.
And I think some people sit there and they go, well, if I'm just continually being positive, but I'm around negative people, well, you can have a positive mindset, but you can have a tolerance for negativity still. And once you remove the tolerance of negativity, then that will automatically remove the people out of your life.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times people just try to say, well, I just got to remove those people. No. At the end of the day, you can outgrow them.
Yes.
You outgrow them, and it's just no longer a fit no more.
Absolutely. It makes me think of like in the gospel story when Jesus is about to raise that 12-year-old girl and he walks in, it says this guy comes to him and he's like, man, my daughter's sick. Would you come heal her? And as he's on his way, she dies.
Yeah.
And then he gets there and everyone's in the room and they're just crying. They're weeping. And he says, all y'all got to go.
Got to go.
And then he adds his disciples in the room and then she raises.
100%.
Almost as if like that kind of negativity kills the atmosphere.
And
I feel that as a church planner too.
Yes.
Let me just tell you that, like taking a vision that God has given you and trying to articulate it to people that are used to downfalls and used to letdowns and all that kind of stuff. It's like, you got to make up in your mind, is this going to stop me?
100%.
Or am I going to keep speaking past it?
Well, and two, man, I think, obviously, your positivity in the way you think should be seen in your life and in your fruits. It's one thing to be positive. There's a lot of self-help right now.
Right.
You can turn on Facebook, Instagram. It's everywhere. The problem is that people will apply it to their mind, but never apply it in their life.
That's good.
And those are two different things.
Absolutely. That's how you see people trying to make lots of money, but still living in a cheap apartment.
Yeah, 100%.
And they're like, I'm out here doing it, but their lifestyle's not reflecting what they're saying.
No fruits.
Yeah.
I like to, I listen to a lot of people, and at the end of the day, when I'm all done, I measure it by their fruit.
That's great. Yeah.
That's it.
That's cool. Over the years at Destiny, we've done a lot of things together, launched campuses together. We've kind of tried new things, and I've always kind of followed your lead on a lot of stuff. And you've definitely tapped into some of this business world. I remember you having a business group years ago with some guys. And you said, Billy, I'm taking all the high capacity businessmen in our church that don't have time to serve or they can't get here, and I'm just going to get together and pour into them. How important do you think marketplace is when it comes to like the church?
Man, it's funny you said that. I was in my small group last week, and there was a discussion question because we're going through a book called The Way to Win, and
that's Jeff Little's book.
Jeff Little's book. Yeah.
I got it at our conference.
Yeah.
Great.
And in the discussion question, it said, what would you do differently if you had to start all over again? And it was pertaining to your career. And, I'm the only pastor in this group, right? So, all these guys were saying things. And then when it came to me, I was like, man, I would probably have put an equal emphasis on marketplace as I did children's ministry when I launched my church. Wow. And I didn't do it. And I didn't do it because I came from a church to where it was always, it was the vision to reach the poor. And I'll never forget, Billy, one day visiting a church, we were getting ready to build out our campus and went to a church in Newport Beach, a very wealthy area. And we took about 30 of our team with us to, get different eyes on it, different looks. And the tour guide gathers us all together. He says, you guys are all ready? And we're like, yeah. He goes, okay, my name is, and he said his name, and he goes, and welcome to Mariners Church. We are called to reach the rich. And I mean, everybody it was like a curse word. Yeah, it was almost like the sun stood still. And this church is beautiful, man. And we all left going, can you believe what he said? And yet something hit me on my way home that day. And it was like, man, if this guy's church knows that they are called to reach the rich, just as people are called to reach the poor, why is that wrong? Yeah. And I'll never forget following up with him. He happened to be an attorney volunteering at his church. And he began to share his story with me on the phone. And he goes, man, I visited like 7 or 8 churches before I came to Mariners. And, I have a very successful law firm. And he goes, but everywhere I went, I felt like I didn't belong. And not because I didn't fit, it was because they made it almost a culture to where I didn't fit.
Yeah.
Like everybody else, if you're struggling in this place, you fit here.
Yeah, but none
if
of
you're
this is applying to me.
yeah, you fit here. Man, if you're really going through struggles in life, you fit here. And he goes, and to be honest, Pastor Obed, he goes, I didn't have those problems. My problems were a little different. And I'll never forget him saying this to me, Billy. It changed my perspective on it. He says, Pastor Obed, I have a beautiful home in Newport Beach, beautiful home in Aspen, Colorado. And he goes, man, I have multiple employees, multiple offices. He goes, but I'm also poor. And when I came to Mariners Church, I was in poverty in my relationship with my children. I was poor, almost bankrupt in my marriage. And he said these words to me, Billy. He says, every person has prosperity and poverty in their life. And it changed me. And I was like, man, I never forget starting to do a study on where I lived, never really did it, and realized that 92% of all the wealth in the world comes through the Palm Springs area. And that, you know, there's a lot of affluent and influential people that have homes there, and you know, people live there, and the average household income is a lot higher than a lot of other places. And I'm like, why are all these people behind the gates not coming to church? And I just began to do, you know, just kind of, you know, taking people out to lunch, having coffee with them. And every one of them was telling me the same story. And it was like, it's just not relevant to me. And so it went on this journey, man. And one of the guys landed up asking me would I do a Bible study, and not knowing that that Bible study would change my life. And as much as I think it's changed them, I always tell them, you guys have changed me. Yeah. And, you know, it's a beautiful thing that we are reaching marketplace people that desperately need God in their life. Yeah. You know, I was at a Christmas party at one of the top country clubs there. And one of the guys in my group was hosting it. There was about 90 people there. And he kept on coming to me and he goes, man, besides me, you're the most popular here. Everybody wants to get around you, right? And guy walks up to me, and he was the COO of Airbnb, part of the startup. Yeah. Yeah. God knows he's in the hundreds of millions, right?
I think he's okay.
And he tells me this, Billy, we're on the dance floor, and he tells me, he says, man, I grew up knowing God, and I fell away when I was in college, and I started going back to church, but it just wasn't for me. It just kind of outgrew it. And he goes, and I thought, I'm going to make all the money in the world. And I was just a lucky person, you know, went to Stanford, and, you know, and next thing you know, I'm starting this company called Airbnb with, you know, a few other guys. And he said, I'm missing something. And I said, so you do have poverty, right? And he goes, well, I don't know. I go, no, you're poor. Mm-hmm. You're poor in this area. Wow. And you're poor in faith. My. And he goes, man, that's what it is. And we landed up talking for like another 20 minutes. And he tells me this, Billy, he goes, I can sit here and talk to you for hours. And I said, you want to know why? I go, because you're drinking from a different well. You can't buy this.
Yeah, this is different.
And now this guy's in my Bible study. Wow. You know, and I mean, he is the first one to interact all the time.
I love that.
And and he just started going to Destiny, one of our campuses, him and his wife. And it's one of those things where it's like, people think those people don't need to be reached. Yeah. And they need to.
It reminds me again of a scripture I'm thinking about when Jesus called his disciples. And it says the first group of guys he called, they were throwing their nets, catching fish. And he says, drop your nets, follow me. Yeah. I'll make you fishers of men. The second group, it says they were fixing their nets.
Yes.
Their nets were broken.
Yeah.
They hadn't been successful in fishing. Yeah. And he says the same words, essentially, follow me, I'll make you fishers of men. So it's like, I feel that because we do as the church sometimes just focus on the down and out, just the broken nets, just the ones that aren't making anything happen. stay in the wilderness. Let's break through.
Yeah.
And then there's all these people who are like, I'm actually good. I just kind of want to know what's next.
Yeah, absolutely. And they experience 10 times more temptation because they have the money to do anything.
Yeah, they have the ability to go places someone else can't.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's incredible. I want to ask a couple more questions. I do want to talk about 2020.
Yeah.
It's hard to think about what's happening in the earth, like whether it's in business or culture, media or fashion, without going, man, things have really changed. What was 2020 like for you? Like, what is something you learned maybe that year personally?
I think what I learned, man, as like everybody, man, is that, the word called pivot.
Yes.
Everybody had to pivot. But I also learned that, again, and this is one of the, I say the hiccups in the church, is that it's always one side or the other. And I think what I learned, man, is that the new church is going to be both ends. It is going to be digital and it's going to be physical. Yeah. And our world's going to be that way, I think that, we are living in a post-pandemic world, and the day's coming when the pandemic will become an endemic. But I don't think a lot of things will change. I think if they would have by now. Yeah. And I think the world is shifting in a different place, and I just think that the church has a lot of catching up to do.
So great, Bishop. I love that, because the innovation sometimes of the world around us can be more forward thinking than the church is.
Yes.
And I've been thinking a lot about future church. And not necessarily that the principles or the values or what we're doing changes, but those things we used to think keep people away. It's it's different now.
It's different.
I have people in my church, for instance, that, they're just fine, never coming in the building again. And are we just not supposed to serve those people? Are we not
100%.
supposed to build their faith and get them resourced and get them in groups? So we got Zoom groups and we got Zoom prayer groups. And obviously, the metaverse has been interesting to see how that comes out. What are your thoughts on the metaverse when you hear that innovation coming out?
Well, the metaverse, man, I mean, obviously, my company.
Yeah.
Meta Faith Entertainment.
Yes.
And in
Meta Faith Entertainment.
Yeah.
Nice. So that'll be for the metaverse.
Yeah. And so it's a whole curriculum for children's ministry. It's going to change the world, right?
Come on.
The metaverse is interesting, man. It's again, I look at it like, first of all, we are moving into what we would call, the third phase of the internet. Okay.
That's true, yeah.
So there's going to be more wealth creation in the next 6 years than ever before. We all remember the .com companies, and they all blew up, and then, some of them stood, some of them are gone, but, we're in that third one, right? And the thing about the church is, and about the metaverse, is almost very similar to streaming. When streaming came out, everybody was like, oh man, everyone's going to get rid of their TVs. And no one got rid of their TV. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, we all still watch, ABC and CBS,
we
right?
Still go for those channels.
Because at the end of the day, it's both ends. And the metaverse is going to be the same way.
Right.
It's going to be your avatar, and it's going to be your natural person. And I think the church has to gear up for it.
Yeah.
I think the reality is that, God has placed a remnant of people, that have this burden for the church when it comes to it being in the metaverse. But I don't think the church will, in some degree, be swift to have services on the metaverse, just because I think everyone is still trying to get everybody back into their buildings.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to take a few years. But I do think it will be around the corner.
I agree.
It's not fast.
No, but I think like you said, the church, I think also we have a filter over anything new.
Yes.
And like here in Western New York, we have Amish community all over, and they build everybody's roofs and and they are very keen. A lot of people think Amish people are outdated. Every piece of technology that comes into an Amish community gets tested.
Yeah.
And you'll ask these people and they'll tell you, the bishop of our town, well, if a smartphone comes out, like someone tests it to see, will it make us better at community or worse at community?
Yeah, yeah.
And I think it's the same way with the church. Sometimes we're slow to really go, is this God? Is this the devil? Is this, demonic and conspiracy? I feel like has worked its way within our thinking.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. I think God is going to move in any technology that we will allow him to move in. And if he can work through the metaverse, I'm open to seeing what he'll do,
Well, and I think there's a bigger scope to that. When you look at Facebook, man, and you go, why would this company, as large as it is, one of the top 5 in the world, would change their name?
Yeah.
Like what why is that, right? And what is Meta? What's behind it all? And this has been kind of the burden on my heart, is that the world, meaning Meta, meaning social media and platforms, is moving into connectedness.
Yeah.
And they understand the pain points of our culture today. I was in Google at Google last month, and I sat in a meeting, Billy, and it rocked me. Because I was in that office for about 8-9 hours with a break and everything. And I would probably say 8 hours they talked about pain points. And maybe an hour they talked about solutions. And so I went to the lady and asked her, I go, is this what you guys normally do? She goes, this is all we do.
Wow.
And she goes, well, tell me a little bit about, the church world. And I said, well, we probably do it different. We spend 8 hours on the solution and talk 1 hour about the pain. And you wonder why social media has a greater understanding of people than the church does.
Wow.
Because we don't want to talk about pain. We want to talk about solutions. The gospel is the solution. Mm-hmm. But every time a miracle took place, Jesus had to address the pain. He listened to the pain.
Yeah, sat in it with them.
And we don't do that.
Right.
Okay?
We're like, you need to pray more, do more, be
100%,
more.
right? And at the church, ever since it's reopened its doors, you're hearing all these pastors like, man, we need community. We need to be community. And it's almost like, guys, the world is so past community. They're at a place called connectedness. You're not going to reach people who are sitting in coffee shops by telling them, come to our church, we're a great community, by first telling them, hey, this is a great place to connect.
Yeah.
And that connection will automatically lead you into community.
That's so good.
And I think that the key word for the church over the next 5 years, we need to get rid of the word community, and we got to start using the word connectedness.
Wow. That
everything we do, every sermon we preach, every song we sing, every handshake we do, every small group we plant, it has one primary focus: connectedness.
I love that
people feel connected.
Yeah.
And that's why the metaverse is going to blow
all
up.
it's going to do is connect people even
that's
more.
all it does.
Yes. Well, community, you can be in it, but connection is like there's something different.
100%.
And you kind of can sit at a table and know
the
you're
community is Decentraland, right?
Right.
But Meta, or your avatar, is connectedness.
Yeah.
The church has to understand that its building is Decentraland. It's a platform. It's where people come, right? Mm-hmm. But that's not community. That's community, but you have to have something even greater that's centered from people to people.
I love it.
In Silicon Valley, we call it A to B and B to C. Okay, A to B and B to C. Okay, and so at the end of the day, everything is connected. And so if the world's doing that, and the church isn't, then you wonder why people don't come to church.
Yeah,
it's
great.
And so we have at Destiny this year, everything we're doing has one thing attached to it. It's if it doesn't connect it, we won't do it.
It's great.
We won't do it. So we're doing a series in February called Catfished, just because everybody knows what it is.
So great.
Okay,
as soon as you say it, I'm connecting. As soon as you say it, I'm connecting with the idea.
Right?
Of
right.
Something like that. Yeah.
And so
powerful.
we want people to come, and guess what? For the first time, and you've sat in many of these meetings, sermon planning, we didn't allow our creativity to take us somewhere. We allowed the pain to take us somewhere.
Wow.
And we talked more about the pain. And Billy, the sermon series we put together for this, the the March Madness we're putting together, the madness of our minds,
Wow.
With anxiety, stress, right? That causes a madness inside of you.
Yeah.
You're connecting with people.
Because pain is a connection point.
That 100%.
Success, I feel like, in a sense, can inspire us.
Yeah.
But pain seems to connect us.
100%.
It makes us real.
Makes us real.
And even as a pastor, I feel like that's what the greatest presentation of the gospel is, not saying, here's a bunch of stuff you can do, but let's talk about how Jesus connects with your pain.
Yes.
And how he's the suffering servant.
And that's
how he can,
and that's what people are looking for.
I love that, Bishop.
That's what people are looking for, man.
Yeah, I value your mind so much.
Oh, man, thank you.
Is there anything you would say? I'll ask you one more question. Is there anything you would say to somebody that's like, they want to get into that marketplace area, the arena?
Yeah.
And they're hard Christians, like they're for Jesus, What would you tell somebody that wants to start a business? Like, what's maybe just one piece of advice when you're startup company or something like that?
I think what's going to set you apart. I got a lot of people, man. We just launched School of Success, and this is really just a 9-month program on teaching people how to start a business, scale a business.
Wow.
But here's what it is, Billy. Your distinction is your disruption. If anytime someone comes to me and say, Pastor Obed, I want to start this business, tell me about it. And they're like, this is what I want to do. I want to sell tacos. I'm like, oh, okay, great. What's your distinction? Okay. Yeah. Well, I want to do this. Okay. Well, tell me your distinction, because your distinction will cause a disruption.
Wow.
Every major company that we follow today disrupted the system.
Yes.
And so if you're not disrupting the system, then you don't have your distinction. Okay. And so this is what, if you want to start a business, because I believe we should all have multiple streams of revenue, right?
Yeah.
And I think that the way you find a distinction is find the problem. That's all you have to do.
Start there.
So everybody thinks I'm going to start a business because I'm going to start with a solution. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do. And I'm like, everything about you is solution. I need to tell me the problem.
Yeah.
So even when you put a pitch deck together, the first thing you do is you identify the problem.
Yeah.
Why am I identifying the problem? Because at the end of the day, here's my solution. And, prime example, company I have ownership now in called Overflow. And this guy was working for Google, pastor at his church, volunteer pastor, secretary on the board. They're in Silicon Valley. He's gonna, they're gonna buy a building. They got to raise, a couple $1 million. Well, you're in Silicon Valley, 90% of the people's money's in stock.
Yeah.
So people were like, hey man, I'll give some of my, Facebook stock or Tesla stock. Well, he landed up meeting with this guy. This guy was going to give him $120,000 of Tesla stock. And he realized the church didn't have an account, a brokerage account. So he had to run over to Fidelity, create a brokerage account. And next thing you know, the guy he tells the guy, hey, I opened up this account. I'm going to send you the documents. So he sends him the documents, emails him. And this guy's 24 years old. And it says, fax it over. Well, when do you tell a 24-year-old to fax something,
Probably
right?
said, what's a fax?
So a month later, he goes to him and says, hey, bro, you kind of said you were going to give 120. He goes, yeah, dude, I'm like, you wanted me to fax? I don't even have a fax machine.
Yeah.
So can I just bring it to you? And right then and there, this idea came to him. And he started a company to where it's almost like a Venmo, but it's for stock and crypto for churches.
Wow, that's great.
And it's like, if someone gives a stock to gospel, Facebook stock, $50,000, it doesn't have to pay capital gains tax. You get it the next day.
Yeah.
And this idea disrupted the system, and it's taken off
That's
like crazy.
Unbelievable.
So
people will be tithing with their cryptos eventually.
We'll set you up.
I'm down. Yeah.
Destiny set up already.
That's what I was saying. I've seen a couple churches introducing it, and I just think again, it's the way of the future.
So we're set up for that awesome. Now. And so, but this is really And I say it all the time, your distinction needs to be your disruption.
I love that. What a word. Bishop, Pastor Obed, thanks so much.
Hey, thank you for having me, man. It's a pleasure to be here.
Anybody watching, where can they kind of connect with you? I know Instagram, it's
Pastor Obed M.
Yep. And anywhere else you would want to direct people?
You know, destinychurch.tv. And if you're interested in taking our course, School of Success, it's a as you go course. So it doesn't have to, you don't actually show up to a school.
Yeah.
And
so you can do it online or something.
You can do it online.
Very
Absolutely.
Cool.
It's be great.
Yeah, well, thanks for being on.
No worries.
Hey, thanks for watching. Make sure you stay tuned for some more great conversations. And if you haven't already, subscribe. We'll see you next time right here on The Good News Show.